Welcome to the Founders Corner, brought to you by OneBridge Accounting. Here's your host, Eli Clark. Hey everyone, Eli Clark here, founder and CEO of OneBridge Accounting and host of the Founders Corner podcast. Today's guest is Suzan Chin-Taylor, the CEO of Creative Raven. Suzan, very excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Eli. Really excited to be here with you and to talk about this subject that we decided upon that's near and dear to my heart.
Oh, I love how you're teasing that a little bit. Like people don't know quite, hopefully they read the title, they know what's happening, but I love it.
Well, hey, it's part of doing what we do, right?
Yes,
we're going to be talking about today. No spoiler alert. Yeah.
No spoilers, right? Yeah. Well, yep. Suzan, before we jump into, like you said, our mystery topic that people may or may not know about if they read the title or not, can you tell us a little bit about kind of your professional background and what kind of brought you to where you are today?
Sure. Well, I've been involved in marketing and digital marketing, creative, in the traditional marketing from way back when. Been involved more decades than I care to count. But where I sit right now, I entered the wastewater infrastructure industry in 1998 when I made a decision to sell off my agency because I'd received an offer that I couldn't refuse from a manufacturer in the space, and thus began my journey into this fascinating world of wastewater infrastructure. And 6 months into this position, I absolutely fell in love with the industry, but I would say really the people. So fast forward about almost 7 years being at this firm, having the time of my life. The company had been sold to a huge conglomerate, and anybody that's ever gone through that, you and I know, it's not if you're going to get laid off, it's when you're going to get laid off. And so I just waited for the other shoe. I waited for the shoe to drop. But in the meantime, what I started doing was putting out my feelers and deciding I'm going to have my own agency again. I'm not going to go to work for another corporation. I'm just going to strike out on my own. So I established Creative Raven, and I decided that I was going to focus purely in the wastewater infrastructure and treatment arena. It's what I knew. It's what I loved. And also learned that marketing for this space is very unlike and very unique than any other type of industry that you might enter, just because of the nuances. The audiences are so varied, the pain points, the decision makers. There's just so many facets to it that really I had the talent, and why not capitalize on it? So here I am. And today, we've been in business since 2004 under that banner. So 21 years. And we offer full service creative marketing. And we also serve as fractional CMOs and outsourced marketing departments to those smaller to mid-sized manufacturers and contractors who want they want the benefits of a CMO or a director of marketing and a full department, but they don't have the finances for it, nor do they want to take on that burden and that overhead. So that's us in a nutshell.
I love that. I love the fractional CMO model, or just fractional services in general, because it's a lot of resources, right? To bring on somebody of a high caliber, right? You're looking at 6 figures easy, if not multiple, right? And that's just for the manager, and then you're going to bring on associates and things, and it gets quite expensive. So the model works really well.
You mentioned, absolutely. Yeah, because it's one small fee a month. Well, I wouldn't say small, but it depends on what you want. But it's one fee. Yeah. It's probably going to cost you less than that 6-figure employee. But what's coming with that is not only their guidance, but all of the creative production, because it's outsourced to their team. So from like you were saying, from a financial standpoint, it just makes really good sense for a lot of companies.
No, I love that. And that's very similar to what we do just on the finance side, kind of fractional accounting. So very cool. Let's dive in. So we've been teasing the mystery subject a little bit. Today we're going to talk about podcasting, and I'm very excited to talk about this. You have a podcast. Obviously you're on my podcast right now, which is really fun. Can you tell us a little bit about your podcast, kind of, who is the audience for it?
Sure.
What got you started in it? Just give us kind of a rundown of what you're doing.
Well, I had gotten this nickname by my friends in the industry because, as you can see, I dress a little, what I would call blingy. And they started to call me, I do a lot of public speaking in the industry at conferences. And I actually, a little backstory behind it is that before going into the career that I'm in, I'd actually gotten accepted to a musical conservatory to study opera. And so people know that I've got this little like diva, like wannabe, like that repressed diva in me. So they gave me this nickname of the doo-doo diva because I know stuff, And so a number of my friends, I had always, going into these conferences and producing videos, I would interview people and being up on the stage and just imparting a lot of content that my friends in the industry, you need to do a podcast. You need to do a podcast. And this kind of nudging went on for about 3 years. And I happened to meet this young gal from London on a networking event. And here she did podcast production. So all I would have to do, and this was the thing that was holding me back, how could I do all the production myself? I can interview people. I can come up with the content, but I don't want all that responsibility of the production, the editing, publishing, whatnot. She's, well, I could do that for a really reasonable fee. And I'm like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
And so in 2022, on the heels of getting over a near-death run-in with COVID, I launched my podcast. I was still suffering from COVID when I did my very first recording.
Oh, wow.
I had set a date. I'd drawn a line in the sand that was going to be my date of my launch. And by hook or by crook, I was going to do it. And so we did it. And we haven't looked back. And so we decided, use my nickname. And so it's the Doo-Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. And the smells like money comes from, it's an old joke in our industry where people will say, ew, the sewer industry, they turn up their nose. And what we do in our industry is we lean over the manhole and go like this. Smells like money to me.
Smells like money, yeah.
Because when that stuff doesn't flow, my customers make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's a recession-proof industry because as long as there's people on the planet, there's going to be waste and we have to have a way to get rid of it. So in so many ways, it does smell like money. So the audience for the podcast is anybody involved in the wastewater industry. Anywhere from wastewater treatment plant operators to supervisors, contractors who provide service, construction, either new or rehabilitation, trenchless, sewer service contractors, plumbing contractors, septic people, portable restroom operators, basically anybody that deals with liquid waste.
Yeah.
I dive a little bit into stormwater because it's all one water. And stormwater, wastewater, potable water, everything is really, it's circular. We don't want to think it's like an us and a them. And so anybody that's involved within those industries are going to tune into this. And so I decided what really drove me to it, not only did I want to impart good knowledge, this industry has been so good to me over the years that I have a creed of paying it forward. And I wanted to give back to an industry that had been very, very good to me in paying it forward, in bringing my knowledge and people that I had been associated with for years, their knowledge to the forefront and share it. And so that's how it all kind of came about. We decided we were going to do it on a weekly basis. And the format was going to be me bringing on experts from the industry to share their knowledge. So the tagline of the podcast is delivering industry know-how from industry pros who know how.
I love it. That's great. So I love the background of how you started in the podcasting space. And you've been doing this, is it 3 years now? 4 years?
Yes, we're into our third year, 14th season, almost coming up on the 15th season after we record a few more. So yeah, and we do it weekly.
That's awesome. So it's been over 100 episodes, right? And
it's several hundred episodes.
Hundred episodes now. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, yes. So from you have a little bit more experience podcasting than I do. I'm just getting started in this space. So what? I guess the question that I always hear, or I think would be a question that a lot of people would ask when thinking about starting a podcast or not is what's the ROI? What's the benefit? What's the return? And maybe from your experience, what have you seen be whether a tangible or an intangible benefit that you've seen from doing the podcast?
There's a little bit of both. I did it, like I said, to give back, but the underlying, I guess you would say, the goal of it was, one, to get more visibility for my agency and what we did, that we were a specialist in the space, to establish the credibility and that, hey, she really knows what she's talking about. She knows this industry. She knows what all these things mean. And also to be, not that I really set out, but it just kind of happened, to be an influencer in the industry with the hope of, gaining more time on the industry conference stage for paid speaking gigs. And, not only that, but again, if you're doing this as a business, you want there to be some type of ROI, and it's kind of hard to measure. But what's been really interesting for me is that very often some of the people that I invite to come on, actually 3 of them, in fact, in the recent year, have actually become clients. I invited them to come on to be guests to talk about what they do in the space. And then after we talk into the podcast, they'd say to me, I really need some help with this. I need some help with my digital marketing, or I need a new website. And so in a way, it opens up doors for you. And so my experience is I did not, and from what I hear from others, I did not want to be just a general marketing podcast. I really dialed into what my industry was looking for. And I think what's worked for us is that I do a mix of things with all my episodes. There'll be a week where I bring on something about trenchless technology. The next week, it might be treatment technology. The next week, it might be software or, administrative. The next week, it might be HR development, recruiting techniques. I did one series all about money that was really personal for the people in the industry about how do you plan your exit strategy, whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur. Are you going to be able to retire comfortably when you leave this business that you have built? And so I like to bring a variety of things that touch on things that are going to be of value to the audience. And I would say for anybody thinking about doing a podcast, before you even start, think about what it is you want to get out of it, because that's really going to drive the format of the podcast, how you name it, the content. Are you going to be doing this just as you being the expert talking, or is it going to be a mix of you sometimes and you with a guest, or is it always going to be you and a guest? So a lot of things went into the decision-making process for me in deciding what is it that I wanted the end game to be.
So let's talk about that.
Did that kind of answer that?
Yeah, no, I love that. Let's talk about that a little bit more. I think the questions that you want to ask before you start a podcast, start with the end in mind, sort of thinking, right?
Right.
So I'm just thinking as we're talking here, like I'm just thinking of questions that somebody might want to ask as they're thinking about if they want to do a podcast or not. Might be like, okay, who's my listener? Who am I listening? Who's listening to the podcast, right? Who, you mentioned, do I have a guest on the show? Is it just me, right? What other questions would somebody want to ask themselves before they decide whether or not to make the investment into a podcast?
Right. I think one of the biggest things is your time commitment. How much time do you have to devote to this? Because I will not lie, it is time consuming. And so you have to look at, and this is why I put starting mine off for so long, because I did not want to DIY it. So you have to think for yourself, do I have the time to DIY it if I'm trying to do it on a shoestring budget? And yes, the answer is yes, you can, but there is a lot of work involved in this. And sometimes it makes sense to say, all right, I can produce the raw show like you and I are doing right now in a Zoom meeting, and then hand it off to a podcast editor for a reasonable fee to take all of that heavy lifting off of my plate. Another thing to ask yourself is, how many episodes do I want to do in a month? Any less than 2, it's just a piece of content that you're putting on your social media feed. To truly build listenership and to get a following and to really be considered like a true podcast, you need to be doing a minimum of 2 a month.
Good.
Some people do these really long podcasts that are like over or an hour. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, I could be wrong, I think that's too long. I think 20 to 30 minutes max is really great because someone can pick this up on their drive time. And after a little bit, you lose them. Also, another thing to think about is, do I want to do a video cast with audio or do I want to do pure audio only? And then most importantly, how am I going to get the word out about the fact that I have a podcast? It's great, but let's face it, this is the field of dreams. If you record it, they will listen. If you build it, they will come. You've got to create the awareness in the space. So how are you going to promote it is something that you've got to ask yourself too.
So thinking beyond just distribution, like it's going to be on Apple Podcasts or it's going to be on Spotify, but also thinking about how am I going to tell people and promote it? Have you
right, to get them to listen on Spotify?
Yeah, to get them to actually listen to the podcast. Yeah,
how are they going to
exactly? Yeah. Have you had success like with ads when promoting the podcast, or what have you done to promote yours?
I think for mine, because of the audience that I have, most of my audience is going to be sitting on the LinkedIn space. So what we've done is, and some YouTube, but mainly on the LinkedIn space, is I created a LinkedIn newsletter under my company profile. That's the Juju Diva podcast newsletter. And so then I began, or my VA is my LinkedIn, I call my LinkedIn guru, but my LinkedIn guru actually started to invite my 10,000 plus first level connections to subscribe to my newsletter and tune into the podcast. The other thing that we do from the weekly podcast is we create short snippets that are posts, and we put a new one up every single week on the LinkedIn feed as a teaser to get people interested in it. They might see it on the feed. We invite them at the bottom of it with the show notes. Tune in, subscribe to the podcast. Another thing we do with all of the full podcasts is we turn them into blog posts that I then put on my website. And then we take those shorts and throw them out on our company social media feeds. I don't know how many people see it, but we put it out on Instagram. We put it out on TikTok. We put it out on Meta. We try to blast it out. And this is what my assistant does for me with the clips, is we try to put that out on as many channels as we can to try to get the word out. And another thing I did was, if you attend industry conferences, print a business card up just for your podcast with a QR code that takes them right to the link to the cast so they can tune in and subscribe, and hand them out, leave them on coffee tables, leave them at the networking events at the conferences. And that has been a real surprise for me, Eli, because we started the podcast and the very next, it was a slow start. I will admit it was a slow start. But the next year, like I started this in January of 2022, 2023, I went to the Arizona Water Conference down in Phoenix. And so I was meeting people down there and I said, oh, you make a great guest, manufacturers of it. You make a great guest for the podcast. And of course, there's always somebody standing next to you that's a city guy there. And so they say, oh, okay, yeah, give me your card. And the guy says, yeah, I want a card too. So I give him a card, Next thing you know, they go, oh my gosh, you're here. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm here? I was podcast all the time. And they said, you're her. And it's because they do the audio and not the video one, so they've never seen what I looked like.
Right, yeah.
And boy, did that do my heart good, because I really had not promoted it. But that told me that my industry was so hungry for this information because nobody else was doing this. And if they were doing it, this is the thing that I think has really helped me grow the listenership and people wanting to do business with me is my podcast is not about what I do to try to get business. My podcast is about being of service to my target audience. And so I know that your client base that you're marketing to is marketing agencies. So I would say to you as a marketing person, who are your clients? And how are you trying to help them do better, get more leads, get more visibility, whatever it is that don't have this podcast be about what you do or you, have it be about what they do.
100%.
Because I've always felt that being of service, educational content brings more people in than a podcast how many of you turned into a podcast where you feel like, dear Lord, this is nothing but a 20-minute infomercial. And you just keep waiting for them to get to the good part of it. Like, can we get past the ad, please, where I can actually learn something I can use? That I don't have to buy something from you first or sign up for something before I could actually get something out of this. And so that's one thing that I would say when you're thinking and planning for your podcast, really keep that in mind. Almost like developing an editorial calendar for your podcast if you need to. That makes sense?
Oh, it totally does. There's so much we can unpack there. Let's start with I loved what you were saying, that actual like tactics, things that you're doing. You're sending out a teaser post near the beginning of the week, right? And that's just is that like a 30-second video or a graphic, something like that?
It's usually under a 2-minute, and it's a snippet that's an excerpt from the actual podcast.
Perfect. So you're sending out this teaser beginning of the week, and then the podcast gets delivered via the newsletter, the LinkedIn newsletter, on a weekly basis as well.
Right. As well as the full episode with the link goes on to LinkedIn as like a post. Okay.
Oh, in addition to the newsletter.
We just really hit it on LinkedIn. And then like the next week, my VA will convert the show notes and the video or audio, like graphics. He makes graphics for me, and then makes that into a blog post. So here's what I love about this is that if you're struggling, this is what I love about podcasts, is that if you're in any business that is really struggling to come up with content on a frequent, consistent basis for your social feeds, podcast is a great answer to that because, one, it shows credibility and knowledge in your subject matter. It positions you as an authority in the space. But then those snippets, those show notes, everything you do, the show notes become a long form article on LinkedIn, and then it turns into a blog post. You do a newsletter. There's another piece of content that goes out. Every single one of those snippets, you do 3 or 4 different snippets. They're all like different sections from that podcast. And what we do is we mix it up because I've got like a backlog of things. So let's say I've done 4 posts. So if I'm doing 2 posts on LinkedIn in a week, one may be from this week's episode, but one being maybe one that I did from a podcast 3 weeks ago that maybe somebody missed in the feed. So you're mixing it up. And so what is that doing? That's generating constant, frequent, persistent content on my social feeds, but it's also putting SEO-rich, pithy content onto my website. And so that gives you that Google love.
Of course, yes.
With backlinks to it, okay? So there's more to it than just a podcast. Podcast becomes a content engine. And then there's another way you can go about it, like what I'm doing with you right now. If you're not ready to take on the production of this yourself right now, think about just being a guest on other popular podcasts to share your knowledge. You get those video clips afterwards that then you can put on your social media feeds. This is the fastest growing marketing medium out there. And if you are in an industry that's got high ticket sales, like for many of my clients, it's capital equipment purchase or capital improvement project, long sales cycle. How do you stay top of mind and position yourself as the authority? There's no better way than podcasting or being on podcasts. I have a client that I interviewed him about a month ago. He just landed a $500,000 deal from his appearance on my podcast.
Wow. Yeah.
So it does work. It does work.
I love that. I love what you mentioned about being a guest on somebody else's podcast, right? Like, we're talking about podcasting and specifically how marketing firms can get started in podcasting. And sometimes your workload or your capacity, it's set up in such a way where you just can't do that. But coming on as a guest is a great way to get started in this space and still build visibility. Obviously, there's still the time of being on a show. There's obviously that time commitment, but you don't have all that back stuff, all the production that comes into that of actually running your own show. 2 questions. First part is, if for somebody who wants to get started, maybe just wants to be a guest on a couple of podcasts, what would you recommend? Maybe 2-3 suggestions on how they can get started being on other people's shows. And then the second question would be, for those who want to start their own podcast, what would you recommend? Just basic things. What can they do to get started? So start with a guest. What would you recommend?
Okay. If you just want to get into guesting, it can be a bit of work to get somebody to invite you to come on the podcast unless you're really found quickly on, your own social feed. I get invited now because I've had a podcast for so many years. I get at least one invite a week because I've had my podcast. But if you're just starting out, it can be a bit of a challenge to get that, somebody saying, well, yes. And so one of the easiest things to do, if you don't have a lot of time, you can have a VA that can look for podcasts that you might be interested in and pitching you. But one of the services that we offer for people interested in this is a podcast guesting service, where then we go out and we look for those podcasts where you would be a good fit for your expertise, where it makes sense to the audience. Like, is that audience going to be people that you're trying to attract as clients? Because there's no sense being on a podcast if you're speaking to an audience that is never going to be interested in your business. Because most people, if they're doing this because they want it to be a lead generation scheme for themselves, correct? So you want to be on podcasts that make sense for you. And so we have VAs and we have people that vet these so that we're choosing those podcasts and pitching you to ones that actually make sense for you to be on, and then getting you scheduled, get to see what it's all about, if they want a pre-interview about topics, but getting those booked for you. And then you get to decide how often you want to do this. Do you want to say, with my bandwidth, all right, I probably could do one of these a month, or do I want to do one a week? Some people, if they really want to, put the pedal to the metal on this, they say, I want to do one a week for this to really gear this up. And it's something that can be done. Obviously, it depends on the budget, how much you want to spend, how much pitching do you want the team to do for you. The second thing is if you want to be, and then if you are a guest, you want to take that appearance and make sure that you're promoting it on your own feeds to get additional mileage out of it. They could be a great guest, but then you want your own audience on LinkedIn or your own followers on Facebook, whatever you're doing, to do it. So if that's another great way to get content done, but somebody else is doing the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. That is a really inexpensive way to enter doing podcasting. The next thing is to DIY and do your own, but we talked about that. The equipment to do your own is really not that expensive. If you've got a decent laptop with a good camera and a lavalier mic, you can interview people over Zoom, and Zoom gets really great sound and video quality. And then you need an editing software for that, sound sweetening, and you need some graphic software to be able to do that. And of course, knowing how to operate on those channels, how to post it, how to make your snippets and whatnot. It's all those production and editing costs. So the equipment needed and the software needed is not that pricey. I think what's pricey is your time. And so you've got to put a price tag on that. And so for me, as a busy executive, I wanted to get this done. And so what I get back out of my podcast more than pays for itself from what it costs me to give it to my podcast production service to do it.
Yeah.
And so now I started with my own, and now I have someone on my team that does it for me and for my customers. Because he said, this really is, now that I learned how to do it, this really isn't that hard to bring this in-house. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're at with it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So those are things that, you have to weigh your time, but it's really not that hard. You record the episode and then you send it off to your editor and then they take it from there. If you're going to be doing guesting though, not you being a guest, but getting your guests, it really helps to have a VA or an admin in your office that can start using Sales Navigator on LinkedIn and sending out messaging to getting people that are willing to be a guest on your podcast. It only takes a couple emails, and people are either going to be like, yeah, I'd love to book an appointment on the Calendly link, to do a pre-vetting call. And there you have it. Like you and I did a pre-vetting call.
Right. Yeah. Pre-production call.
So those are some of the things that, thinking about the two ways that you can enter this. And I would say as a business owner, the easiest ways to enter this. It's, you can try DIYing it, but I'm just sharing from my own experience. It's a lot. And you'll be really excited. You'll be really excited at first, and you'll be able to stay with it for maybe the first 2 months. And then you're like, oh, Lord, this is a lot of work. And I think what the hardest thing is for entrepreneurs doing this is you're really excited. And so that fuels your energy to do it. But then after a while, and you see how much it's taking, it then starts to become a really low priority for you because you have to focus on those revenue generating things in your business. And then it goes to the bottom of the pile. And so I guess for me, I had to weigh my battles. What's more important to me? For me to focus on revenue generating activities and let somebody else do this, or me try to just DIY it myself, where I'm thinking I'm saving money. But if you put a dollar figure onto your hourly time, am I really saving money by DIYing this?
Probably not, right?
Same with a VA. I'm telling you. Yep. I have a VA, works overseas. He's phenomenal. That was the best investment I ever made for myself. He gave me, just taking over my email, he gave me 2.5 hours of my life back every day. And that's huge when you're CEO.
Yes. Well, Suzanne, it's been great having you on the show. We're coming short to the amount of time we have. We'll have to bring you on for a part 2. We can talk a little bit more about this. This is a really fun topic. But
absolutely would love to.
Suzanne, if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Well, easiest things, my website is creativeraven.com. Look me up on, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I have a company page. You can also find my podcast, the Do Diva Smells Like Money podcast. You can email me at raven@creativeraven.com. But the best thing is just, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow my contact and, content and contact me there and let's connect. And if I can be of service, you have any other questions, I'm one of those, like I said early on, I'm all about paying it forward. And especially for new people that are trying to come into this and don't know what to do, it's like, I'm happy to share my pearls of wisdom in what I learned the hard way, mistakes I made, and what's working and what's not.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to put those notes, those links in the show notes for those who want to get in touch with Suzanne. But Suzanne, again, it's been great having you on the show. Appreciate it.
And thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of The Founders Corner, the podcast series for marketing firms and agencies looking to learn and level up their business. You can check out more podcasts and other content from OneBridge Accounting by following the links in the show notes. At OneBridge Accounting, we're all about helping marketing and creative firms organize their finances, maximize their profits, save cash, and automate their accounting and finance functions. Check out our other resources and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.